All right, so it looks like we're
maybe
live.
One question on our script. Okay.
Well, it looks like we're live on most channels now, Paul. Just give me 1 second and let me make sure that we are live on Instagram. There's one extra little step I have to do there. Okay, perfect. All right, so anyways, maybe we'll give it a minute or two just to let people roll in. But I'm excited to be here with you today. I'm so excited to talk about the Roadless Rule. I think you and I can just chat for a minute or two while we wait for some viewers to come in. I see a few are heading in now. I'm going to pull up our chat section so that in case anybody has any questions, they can type them in and I can ask you. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, get ready for some questions. All right. Let's see. All right. So I think I'll go ahead and let's get started. What do you think? You ready?
Yeah, good. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is 3 p.m. Eastern on the nose, 12 p.m. Pacific, and that would be 11 a.m. Alaska time, if I have all my time zones right. So thank you for joining us on this vital day. I'm Marissa Marulli with the Boat Company's communications team. And today we're diving into the U.S. Department of Agriculture's June 2025 announcement to repeal something called the Roadless Rule. The Roadless Rule has been a cornerstone of protection to the United States National Forest System since 2001. With me today is Paul Olson. He is the Boat Company's environmental attorney and director of conservation. His expertise helped defend this rule, the Roadless Rule, in the past. So, Paul, welcome. And I'm so excited to talk to you about the Roadless Rule today and get everyone's questions into you. How is it going over there in Sitka? He's in Sitka, Alaska, everyone.
It's great. It's morning in Sitka. It's 11 a.m. here. It's a little bit gray because it's a rainforest, so that's wonderful. I just spent part of yesterday with some of the boat company's excellent crew, actually driving around in my commercial fishing boat, videotaping other small fishing boats to illustrate the importance of the Roadless Rule to local communities. And right now, the boat company's crew are having their lunch and getting ready to welcome guests aboard the vessel to experience the Tongass National Forest and its roadless areas.
Yeah, so that's actually a perfect time for me to mention a little bit about the boat company and why we're specifically here talking to you about the Roadless Rule repeal. Why is a cruise line called the Boat Company, that's us, here today to speak to you about it. So we are the world's only nonprofit cruise line, and we offer small ship eco cruises in the Tongass National Forest, and we have been doing so for over 45 years. So the Tongass National Forest is very special to us, and the Roadless Rule is very special to us. In fact, we helped create the Roadless Rule, and we've defended it twice since in court. We're here to provide clarity on this matter of how the United States Department of Agriculture is aiming to repeal the Roadless Rule and its protections in the National Forest System. So we're here to provide clarity. There are so many environmental issues going on today, and we want to provide clarity on this specific issue and guide you on actions that you can take while we await what's called something called the public comment period. It's not open yet, but it will be soon, and we're going to help guide you of what you can do prior to it being open and once the comment period is open. We've invited Paul, our environmental attorney, to answer your questions. So that's one of the exciting things that we wanted to offer everyone today. So please go ahead and whatever channel you're tuning in from, most of them you should be able to just type in to the comments section. Even just feel free to send us a little hello. I'll be moderating all of the comments. So if you have any questions for an attorney that has defended this rule and knows just about everything you need to know about it, feel free to type in those questions and I'll ask them to Paul and we'll address them on this live stream. All right, Paul, I'm turning the mic over to you. So let's get started with the rule's history and why it matters now.
Yeah, the rule was promulgated by the Department of Agriculture in 2001, and it protects 58.5 million acres of what are called inventoried roadless areas across America, and including the largest national forest in the United States, 9.34 million acres of just the Tongass National Forest. And the Department of Agriculture did this for a number of reasons. One of them was fiscal responsibility. They had a $8 billion road maintenance backlog, and if you can't afford to maintain your roads, they cause a lot of problems. And it was also to protect what they call roadless values. There's a number of values of these special roadless areas. One of them is undisturbed forest landscapes and the tremendous scenery that people like to enjoy, particularly here on the Tongass. We're doing that right now. It's also protect habitat for fish and wildlife species, a variety of them that range from trout spawning in rivers in Montana, which has a lot of inventoried roadless areas, to the 5 species of Pacific salmon that inhabit the Tongass National Forest and Tongass National Forest here in Alaska. Large mammals like bears need large chunks of intact, unfragmented habitat free of roads. So it's also to protect those species. It's also to protect drinking water for millions of Americans because of these forests moderate water quality. And of course, outdoor recreation, a big contributor to rural economies in America, with millions of Americans benefiting from hiking, camping, and mountain climbing and mountain biking in our national forests. So that was a big focus of the rule, is to preserve these highly economically valuable areas and reduce the costs. And it was supported by hundreds of thousands of Americans. The rule received 1.6 million public comments in favor of it, the largest of any U.S. regulatory matter. And that is ongoing with the Tongass. The Tongass exemption, the efforts to exclude the Tongass from the Roadless Rule continue to receive high support for maintaining Roadless Rule protections. Nearly all commenters want to keep these areas intact. The boat company has been involved in this for a long time. In 2003, the Tongass was exempted from the Roadless Rule, even though it was initially included in its protections. And in 2009, the boat company, Alaska Native tribes, commercial fishing organizations, and conservation organizations represented by the law firm nonprofit Earthjustice sued the agency seeking to reinstate Roadless Rule protections in Southeast Alaska. In 2011, we won in a District of Alaska court, but industry sued, appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and in 2015, the court again ruled in our favor. So we had our Roadless Rule protections. But in 2020, there was again another effort to exempt the Tongass from the Roadless Rule. And we all had to go to court yet again. And that case was stayed when the Biden administration subsequently reinstated the Roadless Rule, and industry sued again. So we had to go back in court to defend it. And here we are now, looking at how the rule is jeopardized today.
Yes. Can you give us some information today about what the difference is between previous efforts to repeal or exempt the forest or any forest from the Roadless Rule, and the difference between how things are in today's Roadless Rule and repeal announcement? So from the Secretary of Agriculture's announcement in June 2025, what is different about this repeal announcement versus the others in the past? What is specifically different today?
This is much more widespread because it's nationwide. They are going to reduce protections for 58.5 million acres of inventoried roadless areas across the country. So it will extend from the South, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, to the Pacific Northwest, to the Rockies, and of course to Alaska. And their reasons are to promote industry, which is a bit crazy when you think about the amount of losses that the agencies have incurred preparing timber sales. in these areas. That is one of the reasons we have the roadless rule, because we have to subsidize the road construction for timber entries, and it's such a small amount of money. In the Tongass National Forest is the biggest money loser of all of them. They spend $20 million a year to gain $1 million in timber revenue, and that would sacrifice a visitor economy. Visitors using Tongass roadless areas alone spend $235 million each year. So it's widespread, and across the country, they've estimated the value of intact roadless areas at $9 billion. So degrading them for a few timber companies doesn't sound like a good idea. And of course, they also cite wildfire risks, but wildfires are actually going to be more likely to occur if you build roads in inventoried roadless areas, because they're mostly human caused. And furthermore, the roadless rule does not prohibit, if you had to go into a roadless area and do fire protection measures, those are allowed under the roadless rule. They absolutely have a public safety exception, and they don't need roads to do it. It's helicopters, smoke jumpers, field crews. So the roadless rule protects us from wildfire. It protects us from landslides. When they enacted it, they also noted that timber entries and logging greatly reduced the risk of landslides. And landslides are, here in the Tongass, there are fires. They are prevalent. They would be devastating to communities if more people lived here, but they mostly occur in remote areas. So the roadless rule protects us from all that. So these reasons for repealing it are wrong-headed.
Certainly sounds like it. And Paul, I'm going to stop you there for a second. I'm going to go ahead and ask if everyone is seeing us live. I have a comment that came in from a viewer who's saying that he's not seeing us. So I just want to take a minute. Maybe we'll pause for a second, Paul, and just see if anyone could please type into the comment if you are seeing us okay, if you're seeing us clear and well. Could you please go ahead and send us a little message to let us know? I know we have a number of people with us. I just want to see if somebody could type to us that they're seeing us all right.
Yeah, my screen's frozen, Marissa. So,
do you want to go ahead and, while we're waiting to see if everyone can see us all right? Oh, okay. It looks like it's working for the person who was having the trouble.
Good.
Do you want to, if you feel your screen is frozen, Paul, do you want to pop back out and then come back in?
Yeah, let's try that.
Sure. Okay, and remember the mic thing when you know how sometimes your microphone turns off. Yes. Okay, so bear with us, everyone. I'll try to entertain you. I don't have quite as much of a fascinating background as Paul Olson does. But today we're here. We are the boat company, and I'm in the communications department. My name is Marissa, and I'm here with Paul Olson, who will be coming back in shortly. His screen froze, but he is the star of the show today, and he's going to be discussing the recent Roadless Rule repeal announcement. So in June of 2025, the United States Department of Agriculture announced the repeal of something called the Roadless Rule. So they were trying to repeal. Oh, here, Paul's come back in. Hold on, let me add him to the stage. So let's see. It'll take a minute for him to load, it looks like. But so the United States Department of Agriculture announced the repeal of the Roadless Rule. And so they're attempting, or will be, removing these protections that the Roadless Rule grants to all of the national forests that are protected underneath it, which amounts to 58.5 million acres across the United States of America. So in the Tongass, which is the national forest where the boat company cruises in, there's about 17 million acres. And about half of that, I'm overgeneralizing, but about half of that is waterways and half of that is forest. So the Roadless Rule protects 9.34 million acres of forest in the Tongass. Let me see. It looks like Paul's coming back in again, or trying to. It's not easy streaming with him in Sitka, Alaska. They have quite a busy weekend every weekend during the summer with massive cruise ships coming in. And it looks like we have him back.
Yes, all right.
All right, wonderful. Okay, if you freeze again, we'll try doing that again. But looks like you're clear and crystal clear.
Good.
I was just reiterating to everyone why we're here, and that the Tongass National Forest, it being about 17 million acres, but the Roadless Rule protects about 9.34 million of those acres. Something else, if you haven't already heard the boat company say it 1,000 times over, the Tongass National Forest is the largest national forest in America. 17 million acres sounds about right to be the largest. So it's a very special forest. It's the largest intact temperate rainforest. So it has a very special ecology. A lot of very wonderful species depend on this forest. It actually is home to the largest density of bald eagles in the world, among other very cool things. But I'm going to turn this back over to the star of our show, Paul. So Paul, I'm trying to think about where you were. I think you were talking about, how the Roadless Rule is jeopardized today. And you're explaining, some of the claims that the United States Department of Agriculture used as reasons why they should be repealing the Roadless Rule, namely, that it's, financial reasons, and also, better forest management to prevent wildfires. And we have the science and the data that debunks those claims. So I think you were getting into those.
Yeah, that's what I was getting into, is that the reasons make no sense. And it goes back to the history of the boat company. One of the reasons Hunter McIntosh, our current president, his father, Mike McIntosh, founded the boat company, was to illustrate how much more valuable these areas are for recreation, for intrinsic values of fish and wildlife, as opposed to industrial scale logging. As I mentioned, it was a huge loss, so there's no economic benefit to the country. There have been multiple studies of it on the Tongass, and they've all shown that we lose $20 million a year. It's a taxpayer subsidy to help one or two large companies ship these logs off to China for processing. That's what's going on now. So it's not about jobs. The jobs in Southeast Alaska are small boat commercial fishing, and they're in tourism. And it's the same for other rural economies throughout the country that are built on the outdoor recreation experience. Let people go for a walk and get healthier. They come back from our tours renewed, physically and mentally better off than they were before they started their week. So that's why it's really important to maintain these protections. And I think there will be some public comment opportunities on the Roadless Rule. The boat company has been working to educate people, and we know a little bit more now. We've been actually expecting a formal regulatory notice this month, and we have not received it yet. But what we are anticipating is that they will release a Federal Register notice called a Notice of Intent, and there will probably be a very short public comment period. So it's really good that we have opportunities, that you put things together that can enable people to do it quickly, because it will be very short. And we think there will be a longer comment period, and perhaps the government may even produce some new environmental analyses and documents for the public to review. But right now, this first stage is really important for people to let the administration know that our roadless areas are more important for other economic purposes and for the social values and for maintaining intact fish and wildlife habitat.
Absolutely. And so on that note, Paul, let's get into the specific of what are we doing as the boat company to defend the Roadless Rule repeal announcement that took place in late June. So what are we doing? I know we're doing a couple things. So can you help explain to us what we're doing and let everybody know, and kind of differentiating between what people can do, because people can do something about this, what they can do prior to that public comment period being open. So via way of the sign-on letter, you'll get into that. And then what they can do after, once that public comment period does open. And again, we don't know when that's going to happen. We expect it at any point. And definitely stay tuned to our social media and our newsletter. You can go to our website, theboatcompany.org. You can sign up at our newsletter at the bottom. We will be announcing it everywhere once that public comment period is open so that you can submit a formal comment. But Paul is going to explain specifically what the boat company is doing, potentially with also mentioning what what we're doing with our partners, and then what you all can do when the public comment period opens.
Yeah, we'll really be doing two things, and one of which is to educate people and inform people about opportunities to comment through our website and through social media. And we'll be doing a long, detailed letter outlining what's wrong with the decision to repeal the Roadless Rule. We'll be working with our law firm, Earthjustice, local commercial fishing groups, other eco-tour operators who are equally concerned about the Roadless repeal, because everywhere ourselves and other ecotourism operators go is quite literally inventoried roadless areas that would be put at risk to logging or road construction if we don't maintain these protections. So I will be writing probably a 20 to 40 page letter. And at this stage, it's going to be to put material on the administrative record detailing the extent to which we use these roadless areas, what we use them for, the extent to which wildlife depend on these roadless areas. We'll be researching trends, like you mentioned, bald eagles. There's 30,000 of them here in Southeast Alaska. They need to be protected from logging. They live in old growth trees, the biggest ones. Are bears, which people love bears. Bears are, just by being there, are a tremendous economic value generator for hundreds of businesses in the Pacific Northwest. So, and we have more of them here in Southeast Alaska than anywhere else. The boat company's clients will be seeing Kiyu Island with the largest density of black bears in the world. The Admiralty, Baranof, and Chichagof Islands, there's hundreds of bears. And so bears need these areas because they need undisturbed habitat, and they need a lot of it for foraging. Sitka black-tailed deer that are tremendously fun for people to see, and they're also an important part of local culture and food security. And these species need roadless areas throughout the country. So I'll be detailing that. I'll be talking about how much salmon depend on roadless areas. Roadless areas support twice as many fish as areas without road. And as a matter of fact, timber and road construction has been devastating to a number of specific salmon populations in the Pacific Northwest, especially coho salmon, which are one of our most important species that guests enjoy here in Southeast Alaska. I harvest them commercially. So yeah, I will be detailing all of that and why it's legally wrong to do it. And I will also highlight the economic issues. As I mentioned previously, there have been multiple economic studies, including some by the government's own Government Accountability Office, explaining that the timber industry up here loses money. It costs taxpayers money to have two companies make profits destroying our wildlife habitat. And we'll be detailing, with our fellow eco-tour operators, how they would cut us off of large areas along our cruise routes, as well as the self-guided recreating public. So that's phase one. That will be what I do. And of course, what you do will be to give people opportunities to get on the web, sign on to the boat company's letter, which is available at act.theboatcompany.org. And when they issue the regulatory notice, there you can also submit an individualized comment at a website called www.regulations.gov. And that will be made available through the Federal Register. And so I will know just about as soon as this notice comes out, and I will let you know, and you will be able to give people the opportunity either to sign on to the boat company's letter, or if you have time during the short time frame, get on www.regulations.gov. They have a little box where you can type in an individualized comment and submit, or they also have an option if you want to write a letter. You can submit it as an attachment. If you want to send pictures of your experience in the Tongass roadless area, you can include those too. So that is our basically two-pronged approach to getting people engaged on this.
So I'm just going to pull it up real quick here. So, to reiterate, Paul is the boat company with Paul's legal expertise is doing two things. And one of those things is that Paul is putting together this 20 to 40, 50 page letter to the officials, and listing out all of the reasons in which this forest should be protected. He's done it before, so he knows how this goes. And one of the things that we've built is, as I had on the screen earlier, act.theboatcompany.org. So this, let me just pull it up on my screen. I know I have it on yours, but I have to be able to actually, okay. All right. Oh yeah. And you can see my mouse too. Okay. So this is, it's act.theboatcompany.org, or it'll take you to fightfortheforests.org. Either one will get you there. You can see act.theboatcompany.org, just lands you right to fightfortheforests.org. And what this page does is it explains a lot of our history with the Roadless Rule. And it explains facts about the Tongass National Forest, which is the area where the boat company cruises, as I mentioned. So 9.3 million acres of the Tongass National Forest are at risk, but 58.5 million acres in totality of United States national forests across the country are at risk with this Roadless Rule being repealed. So we have a lot of information on this website about, our history, the beginning of, the Roadless Rule, the beginning of our legacy with it as the cruise line that we are, things that we've done in the past to protect it. But you'll see a lot of this area to sign our letter. So this is that letter that Paul's going to be creating that he will send to the officials. We've added a little addendum. Even while he's creating his letter, we've added this addendum, which you can see here is Dear Secretary Brooke Collins and Chief Tom Schultz. And then we just basically write, a letter saying that, please protect the Roadless Rule. That's what we believe in, protect this area. And then that's what you would be signing onto if you type your name and information here. And you can write any kind of comment you would like to include as well. And then your name will be added to a software that we have, and we will be printing and creating a PDF of everyone's name and their comments. And that will be added as an addendum to Paul's letter. So your name, your signature, your voice, your comment will be attached as an addendum to Paul's letter. So I just wanted to be really clear that that's one thing you can do today, now, before the public comment period opens. You don't have to, wait and try to figure out, is it open yet? Is it not? If you sign on to our sign-on letter, we will make sure that it goes with our comment from our letter from Paul to the officials. The other website that Paul mentioned is regulations.gov. And Paul, maybe I'll have you explain this one a little bit but basically this is where you will go once the public comment period is open, correct?
Yeah, it's a government website that you use whenever a federal agency issues a new rule or a plan to issue a new rule. They publish it in something called the Federal Register, which is it's tens of thousands of pages of stuff each year. But then they will direct you to this www.regulations.gov website if you want to submit a comment. And it's fairly easy to use. We use it for all sorts of regulatory issues. The boat company's not just involved in the Roadless Rule. We also battle the bycatch of halibut by industrial trawling. We work with small boat fishermen to ensure sustainable seafood resources for all of us. And so we use that website a lot for that purpose too. And I sometimes have fishermen call me and say, how do I get into this? And I say, go to www.regulations.gov. And normally it works very well. Every now and then there will be a glitch, but generally you just have to get there. The main thing is to actually find the correct, what they call the docket number. Once the government issues this rule, they will put a docket number on it, and in order to submit a comment you have to have that docket number, and sometimes that's a little challenging for some people, but call us. We'll make it clear. We will have a link right to the docket is what we will have, so you should be able to get in there.
Right. And this regulations.gov, putting a comment there is the place to have it formally recognized, your comment, correct, Paul?
Yeah, that's correct. And also it's our sign-on letters can be great because one thing we like to document when we do actions like this is how many people care. It's really important to get lots of people because when we have to go to court, or justice likes to remind the Forest Service that, hey, 96% of the people that commented on the Tongass exemption said we want roadless rule protections intact to protect our fish, wildlife, and economies. And so it's really important for us to be able to say that. And I don't know if we are going to change the agency's mind, but they need to know if they actually think this is economically beneficial. It's not. It's bad, 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 bad. So, maybe there's a chance to change minds with economic sense.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. Economically speaking, you mentioned, logging brings in $20 million and that annually, and that recreation and tourism bring in over, what was it, over 200 million? Did I understand that? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, that's just roadless areas. And, the 20 million, I think, came out of national sales. Like on the Tongass, the revenues are much less. It's a $20 million loss for $1 million in revenues. It's crazy.
$20 million loss for $1 million in revenue.
I have a friend who does small scale logging, which is good here. People do single tree selection, not industrial clear cuts, for local home building or for cedar for boats. And I was showing him a timber sale bid that I was analyzing one time, and he gets out his calculator and he looks at me and he says, "So they're still selling an old growth tree for the price of a Big Mac."
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. The things that you've been exposed to, this is why it's so wonderful to have you, the things that the things you have in your arsenal. I think that's actually why it's going to be so special that we have this opportunity for people to sign on to your letter. I think that'll be really special for people to be able to do if they're trying to do something now. And then of course we do not want to discourage anyone from going to regulations.gov once that docket once we have that docket number, once the public comment period does open. So continuing on, I do see a couple questions are coming in.
Good.
So that's so great. Please, what's that, Paul?
Yeah, maybe it's time for that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Let's go ahead. All right. So I have a question or two coming in. So we're going to start getting into questions. We don't want to take up too much of everybody's time today. So please, if you have any questions, type them in now and we'll get to them for you. Okay. So we've moved into the question time. So go ahead and fire away. All right. So we have a question. Let's see if I can remove. There we go. Okay. From a Wolcott Blair. What do the indigenous people of the Tongass National Forest want regarding the roadless rule?
They have been to court with us defending the roadless rule multiple times. The lead plaintiff in the first case the boat company was involved in was the organized village of Cake, which is a community next to where we take people hiking in roadless areas on Kuyu Island, is the traditional historic territory of the Cake Tlingit. The organized village of Kasan is also on the roadless rule. And the tribes were very upset when they're supposed to receive formal consultation from the government when it takes a regulatory action. And the tribes were very upset that they did not get that consultation during the Roadless Rule repeal several years ago. They actually filed a petition to the government to reinstate it. So yeah, it's those intact landscapes it's their traditional territory. It's their homeland, and they use it for berry gathering. They still maintain a very active traditional culture up here. As a matter of fact, there are some eco-tour companies that are just dedicated to visiting native villages. It's called cultural tourism, so you can experience totem poles and native art, basket weaving. Basket weaving is really being reinvigorated. I bet some of the boat companies' guests have probably bought a couple in Sitka. So yeah, the Roadless Rule protects their traditional values, their forests, their fish and wildlife, and a lot of those communities, when they're looking at economic development, they prefer ecotourism. and fishing, of course. I mean, everybody up here is about salmon. So, and salmon need roadless watershed. So that's probably one of the biggest things that they're concerned about is their fishing economies, food security. So we have strong friends from the native communities on the Roadless Rule.
Thank you so much for your question, Wolcott Blair. In fact, I actually have a question. It looks like in case there's any more coming in, I don't have any. Oh, we just got another, so I'll let this person take the lead. Here we go. Is hard data of the dollar recreation generates and the money generated by non-recreational activities, as area has been closed, how can the non-recreational be determined? Is hard data of the... Are you understanding the question, Paul?
I think I do. I think the question is, how do we get this data, the value of recreational use? And the $250 million visitor spending number is a Forest Service number they use. It's called the National Visitor Use Monitoring Database. And so they calculate the number of visits to Tongass National Forest roadless areas. And we also have quite a significant number of independent studies that value recreational use, and we can detail it down to specific species. Like we have a study, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game did one on the value of wildlife statewide, and that showed that this was in 2011. The study came out in 2015, but it showed that Alaska residents value their wildlife as much as visitors who come to see it. And visitors spent $234 million in Southeast Alaska, 3,000 jobs. But in comparison, there's 61 timber industry jobs in Southeast Alaska, and most of those are probably non-resident. So we have that data. And as far as the non-recreational uses, the timber revenues are pretty clear because the Forest Service has to reveal how much money the timber industry is going to make from a certain sale. And most of the sales are actually, because the Tongass is so remote and we don't have local timber processing capacity compared to northern BC, most of the sales are what are called deficit appraised, meaning the value of the timber sale is negative. So those few sales that do overcome that, the Taxpayers for Common Sense, the Government Accountability Office, and other independent studies have the data that show precisely how much it costs and how much we can probably even provide those at some point. I have all those charts. They're staggering. They see $20.7 million in agency expenditures on timber sale, $1.7 million in revenue. And that goes on year after year after year. I think it was the Taxpayers for Common Sense, which is a fiscal watchdog group in Washington, D.C. I think they came up with $632 million from 1999 to 2018. That's the taxpayer loss for Tongass timber sales alone. So yeah, there's lots of good data on them. The economic data, there is some extrapolation, because we talk about economic outputs and direct spending. So, if you're familiar with economic studies, you get 3,000 jobs, but then you have extra jobs. Let's say someone comes on a tour boat and they buy, they go to a restaurant, they spend $100. Well, then that restaurant worker goes and spends $50. So that a lot of the economic studies do that. Well, what is the spending by the worker? So there's different ways to break it down. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Bill, do let us know if you feel like your question has not been answered. We'll, retype in it for any clarity, and we'll make sure we get that for you. But, in your answer, Paul, I certainly felt like this is why you're writing this letter. And I feel, to the officials, and I feel that you'll probably be including this information and this data in that letter, correct? I mean, so that it's just it's just point blank information that just can't be argued.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely rely on, I think the fish and wildlife, the intrinsic values of roadless areas are the most important thing, but what government agencies understand is economics. Courts understand that a lot better than biological science as well. So yes, we need to lay on the table how big the visitor industry sector that relies on these intact habitats is, how big our partner, the small boat commercial fishermen, who are the same. We're the private sector economy, these two sectors, ecotourism and small boat commercial fishing, and how much we rely on these roadless areas and how much larger our economic contribution is, and how much more important we are socioeconomically in terms of contributing to the communities. The boat company and other small cruise lines, we all give to the communities. Commercial fishermen donate food for food security issues, spend their money in local communities. And if the Roadless Rule was repealed and timber companies came in, these logs would just get cut down and shipped to China. That's literally what is happening on Tongass right now. So, yeah, we will definitely be making these economic arguments.
On that note, actually, Paul, that does revert back to the question that I wanted to ask you when you were speaking of the wildlife, answering the last question. But can you specifically explain how, when it comes to salmon and the various fish species, how do roadless areas actually benefit fish? I think that it probably makes a lot of sense to people who are involved, but for other people, or for the everyday person who's not necessarily in the area, or you think roads and you think fish, and you don't really see those two things connecting.
Yeah. No, the roadless areas, there's a lot of features. Water quality is a big one, because once you put in a road and you don't maintain it, it starts to impair water quality, and it does that in a number of ways. Now, one of the most common things is sediment inputs, that run off from the roads, and that actually gets in the gills of salmon and chokes and kills them. And it happens a lot. It's chronic throughout the Tongass, and it was chronic throughout the United States when they developed the Roadless Rule. One of the things that we have, one of our biggest problems here, it has to do with the original rationale for the Roadless Rule. You don't have the budget to maintain roads. So they built, I think, about 5,000 miles of roads in the Tongass for timber entries. And when they build roads, the best way to build a road over a salmon stream is to put a bridge over it. But the other way, and the most common way, is to put in what's called culvert. And they eventually become what's called red culverts or barrier culverts, in that they fail. They get smashed, they get plugged, and there's hundreds of them across the Tongass. And those things block off spawning habitat. There's really hundreds of miles of habitat that were once accessible to salmon that no longer are. And that's just spawning habitat. It also impairs juvenile fish. Like juvenile survival often drives the strength of a run, or the sustainability of a population. And those juvenile fish move around a watershed from place to place. They may be fleeing a flood, they may be looking for food, but once you have these barrier culverts, they're stuck wherever they are, so they cannot move to a better foraging opportunity. They cannot flee catastrophic events. Roads increase landslides, and accompanied by timber make it worse. So when landslides enter a stream, the Alaska natives, landslides have been here for years, and Alaska natives would clear them in order to restore the salmon habitat. But if they're caused by roads and timber, and they're occurring at a frequency that's just faster than people can clean up, then you're losing salmon. And we've got a lot of healthy salmon populations up here, but there are some that aren't. And we probably have scientists who study them say there's been a loss of productivity on the Tongass due to logging and timber road construction. It's just nobody's monitoring it, so we really don't know what it is. We just know it happened.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. That definitely connects the two. How the Roadless Rule affects salmon and fish. Who would think, Okay, we do have another question from a Linda Millard. Hopefully I'm saying the last name right. What is the stage of logging camps in the Tongass? Those I saw while on the boat looked forlorn and run down. Wouldn't it cost a fortune to get those things going again? Are there real incentives to log?
Yeah, the camps are run down. The infrastructure is run down because the industry has really diminished over the last 20 years. So yes, having the infrastructure to do it is a big issue in terms of how much logging may occur. One of the classic places is QU Island. That may even be where you saw the jeopardy camp. So yes, the timber operators have to find a way to get people there. But the Forest Service did build $3 million worth of road for them. To put that on that island, to put that in perspective, they don't have $500,000 to build a mile of trail for the boat company's guests or local users. So there's a real risk that the Forest Service will do whatever it can to make timber sales work. But yes, they are low value, so the risk of logging is in really certain areas, and there often happen to be the most productive fish and wildlife habitat, which overlaps with the most productive old growth forest. Guess what? That's what happened over time. Over the 70 years of the timber industry, is they took the best, and they're kind of scraping at what's left, but they're still there. There's really just two companies that still operate here, and one of them will do whatever it takes. One of them's pretty limited, but the other one will go into remote areas like QU and log if they can find a way to make it work. So it's I can't remember, the boat company had an economist who worked on this issues years ago, and I think he once said that Alaska senators would spend whatever it takes to keep logging going. So yes, it will cost a lot, and people will spend that money. That's a great question.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that question. Thank you, Paul, for such an informative answer. On that note, I think that's it for questions. I'm going to buffer with a question of my own in case anybody else wants to type anything in. We have a few minutes, or as long as you all need, really. We just wanted to keep it short timing wise out of respect for your all's time. But if you all have any more questions, please, we'll hang out and answer them. So I'm going to ask Paul a question to fill some time for a minute. And if you have any more, feel free to write them in. But I don't know if we'll see if this turns into a question, but I think it might just be a discussion, Paul, but I just think it's really interesting that, the Roadless Rule protects 58.5 million acres of national forests throughout the United States. Okay, so let's just round that to 60. And just for the sake of, making math easy on the brain, let's just round it to 60 for now. And if the Roadless Rule protects 9.3 million acres of the Tongass, let's just round that to 10. I know it should really be 9, but 10 again for the sake of math. So 10 and 50. So it's like 1/5 of what the Roadless Rule protects is in the Tongass. That's significant, and for it being the largest intact, coastal temperate rainforest in the world, that's important, ecologically, for biodiversity, all, the species, like you said. And it makes me think about, the old growth forests and, how we happen to have, as you mentioned, largest population of brown bear on the one island, and how we have the largest population of bald eagles in the world. And it's like, well, why do you think we have those things? Probably because this is old growth forests area that's been protected for so long. And, it's fairly intact, right? It's the largest intact left of this type of ecosystem. So it's a really important place. But with that said, not but, more like and with that said, this time around with this repeal, we're seeing risks beyond and outside of the Tongass. So, this defense, this letter that Paul's writing, this defense that we're upholding, is to protect all of the forests that are under this protection. And those forests go all the way, to other corners of the country. Paul, do you have any, information or even just names of a couple of the other forests that are being targeted by this repeal?
I have to admit, I don't have the names of specific forests. I mean, I have lived in Southeast Alaska for most of my life, but I now live near the Wenatchee National Forest, which of course has inventoried roadless areas. And I recreate in probably the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Sometimes when I go visit the boat company's boats and read for it in the spring. My dogs and wife and I will drive down, and we're going through national forests. So yeah, it's large in scale. And like I said, every one of these forests is just as valuable to the wildlife and fish that inhabit it as they are to the Tongass. So yeah, the water quality, one of the main reasons is water quality was a real interesting reason, and public safety. I mean, forests have what's called a regulating ecosystem service. In other words, they protect us against floods, landslides, fires. The forests that we have where I live are fire resistant, not entirely, obviously, because there's fires going on, but the ponderosa pine, it's a natural thing in a lot of Western forests. Fire is. It's become unnatural in scale lately, but many trees are fire resistant, and you can see how they've survived fires over the years. And if we lose those, an area just becomes more fire prone. I think that's one of the things we were talking about earlier, is that when you remove a forest, you're actually increasing wildfire risks, particularly when you remove the largest old growth trees that have survived a couple fires. I've seen them, they've got the black scars, ponderosa pines, but they're still trees that have been there for hundreds of years.
Yeah, and it's just wild to me that these are the very claims that the USDA is making for the case of repealing the rule. It's just, all of these claims can be debunked. The economic claim of it being better economically to log, when we see that it's actually a deficit. Over tourism and recreation in our forest, at least, and then to be responsible with fire management when, it's the statistic is road building, it either triples or quadruples the possibility of fires in the forest. It doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. And anyway, since I asked the question, I felt like now I needed to answer it for everybody. I feel bad.
Great. Good.
I did do a quick little look up, and we've had this list. We've looked it up definitely in the just in preparation for this live stream, and just different things, but kind of digressed. But so basically, significant portions of forests in 39 states are protected by the Roadless Rule. So 39 states. So that's in particularly large areas in obviously Alaska, and then I believe the Chugach, right? Did you say the Chugach? Yeah, the Chugach.
Yeah, it might be the second largest forest. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it is, at least on the roadless risk list, if you will. I've spent time there. I love both the Tongass and the Chugach. The Chugach is all around, kind of like the Anchorage area, if you will. So if anybody's been up to the Anchorage area, in kind of like Cook Inlet in those areas, Chugach is beautiful. Anyways, the Chugach National Forest, also large chunks of Montana, Utah, and California. So those are the most affected forests by the roadless, but there are others. So it says here that Western states like Montana, Utah, and California have large roadless areas. For example, about 58% of Montana's Forest Service is covered by the rule. So that's a chunk of Montana's. So about 60% of Montana's forest. California has about 4.4 million acres protected across 21 national forests. So 21 national forests in California have protection underneath the Roadless Rule. And including the Angeles, the Tahoe, Inyo, Shasta, Trinity, and Los Padres National Forests. We also have some protections under the Roadless Rule in the eastern states. So it also applies to North Carolina. So the Nantahala and Pisgah National Forests in North Carolina are protected. So this Roadless Rule repeal is larger than Alaska. and our defense of it now this time around does extend beyond the Tongass National Forest, even though that is where the boat company cruises, and that is the forest that we have been protecting. In Southeast Alaska, we've been protecting for over 45 years. But with this repeal, we will be defending. It does include defending the whole system, and even when we helped put it into place, the Roadless Rule, did it cover other forests, Paul, or was it just the Tongass at the time? Do you know at inception?
Yeah, it was a national rulemaking, and all the points we made about the Tongass applied to every other forest they were protecting. One of the main points they made, I was just rereading the preamble to the rule this morning, is that because so many forested areas have been lost, converted to agricultural uses, taken down for timber, just developed for urban areas. These are the large chunks. It's about the size, the size of the forest. These remaining large chunks of forest are just vitally important for the ecosystem services they provide to human beings and fish and wildlife. And the Tongass, like you mentioned, there are just 7 coastal temperate rainforests in the world. And the Tongass is they're unique because of their maritime climates. They're resistant to fire. That's one of the big deal. They're called perhumid forest, permanently humid. They're permanently wet. So they will be able to, if fires increase and worsen other forests, these forests will remain because it's raining today and it rained yesterday.
So. Yes, quite a different climate from where I'm sitting. Mm-hmm. But no, that is truly something, and I'm again just in awe of the information that you have on this matter, and I'm so excited that you're helping protect this forest and the Roadless Rule. So we do have another question, but actually one just popped into my brain. Paul, the letter that you're writing to that everyone, all this, the sign-on letter that everyone will be signing on to, and that will be an addendum to your letter. All the signatures will be an addendum to your letter that you say is about 20 to 50 pages. Will anybody have access to read that?
We'll definitely make it available for you to post a link. I think I've heard more recently that it is going to be a very short comment period and that there will be a second. So I may not throw everything at the agency with this initial letter. It may be more of a 20-pager to set the record, to establish who is using the Tongass roadless areas and for what. It basically it's called building the administrative record, that we need to establish how much we're using these areas, who's using them, why, economics. But I may be able to save the 50-pager for next year when they issue a final rule.
So it's a stepped process. I just think it's really, there's so much information, and that's why we're doing this live stream, but there's so much information coming out, that's locked, in your, well, it won't be locked for long, but just all the information that you have, all the exposure that you have had over the years and decades to this topic. It's wildly informative, and it might be really cool for some people if they wanted to read that letter.
Yes.
So that's good to know that will be a letter that can be read by others if they would like. So we have another question from Wolcott Blair. What percentage of the Tongass are represented by the ABC Islands, Admiralty, Baranof, and Chickagaw?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of information on that, but roughly, I would say roughly a fourth. I think 2.7 million acres of them, including the mainland adjacent to Admiralty, are congressionally designated wilderness, and I think they're like 4.7 million acres, but it includes a portion of the mainland. So that's like northern Southeast Alaska. They're three of the 4 largest islands in Southeast Alaska. The largest is Prince of Wales Island, which is the southernmost island, and it had the best old growth forests in the world. That's where a lot of the logging has happened. It's really staggering. They have the biggest trees. It's a little bit more temperate climate. Admiralty and Baranof and Chichagov are a little bit steeper. So they're all each different unique ecosystems. But yeah, Admiralty, Baranof, and Chichagof, known as Wolcott must know, known as the ABC Islands, because they support the largest density of brown bears in Southeast Alaska. And interestingly, because they're islands, they got isolated during the glacial era. And so those bears are actually descendants of polar bears or relatives of them, even though they're brown bears. And, fun fact about these areas, some of them got protected during the area of industrial logging in large part because of Mike McIntosh, the founder of the boat company. He worked with a number of conservation organizations and got some of them protected under the Federal Wilderness Act, including South Baranof Wilderness, where boat company guests went fishing this year. Never been logged, never will be. Admiralty Island, the same thing. It's also known as the Kootznoowoo Wilderness. That's the Alaska Native name for it, is Kootznoowoo, and it's a fortress of the bears. It's and those bears are there because it didn't get logged. And yeah, it's all of those islands, and they haven't been logged. The other islands have been logged, but it's been 30 years. So those are recovering habitats, and second growth forests are of no value to wildlife until they grow for 300 years, because we need large trees. The wildlife need large trees, but at least those trees are growing back.
Wow. Thank you. That was a great question. And again, thank you, Paul. That was a great answer. All right. Well, I think, we have one last question, which actually wraps it up really nicely, from Linda again. She says, thank you. What are the best sites to find follow-up info in order to keep advocating? I'm going to just mention again that we have... now I have to find it on my screen somewhere. I see that I'm displaying it. I just have to find the actual tab. Here we go. Again, act.theboatcompany.org. Let me see if I can get that banner up again for you too. Act.theboatcompany.org will take you to this website, which is fightfortheforests.org. It's the same website. So this is a website that the boat company put together. You can see it's sponsored by the boat company. So we put it together in order to allow people to take action ahead of the public comment period. And again, that's by just signing something that we call a sign-on letter, which is the letter itself is already, the sign-on letter is written. So you're basically signing that you agree to this. Oops, popped up something on my computer. Okay, so basically it's just signing that you agree to this, these two paragraphs, and then this, with your signature, this paragraph, these paragraphs, this letter with your signature and with any comments that you add will be added as an addendum to Paul's letter to the officials. So that's something you can do, and it will be recognized. The other thing that you can do, again, as we mentioned, once the public comment period opens, and only once that public comment period opens, will you be able to write a comment that is formally recognized directly to the government, or directly to the agencies. There are on act.theboatcompany.org or fightfortheforests.org. We do have other sources that are good places to go, with our partners. Let me just see what area of other resources are, Earthjustice, Natural Resources Defense Council, Center for Biodiversity. We have we keep a tab of news about this topic going on too. So you can stay tuned that way. I am sure that Earthjustice, Natural Resources Defense Council, Center for Biodiversity, they might also have a sign-on letter as well. I'm not sure. But Paul, do you have anything else to add about, let's pull her question back up so that it's really clear. What are the best sites to find?
I just think, Earthjustice and I think Earthjustice and Natural Resources Defense Council websites have very comprehensive information about the Roadless Rule, both for the Tongass and nationally. And I mentioned Earthjustice a lot because they're based in Juneau and we work with them person to person. But Natural Resources Defense Council is also our law firm on Roadless Rule issues, and they work with Earthjustice. Once I finish my work at the administrative level, these are the people that do the hard work of trying to explain to a judge why the Roadless Rule is important. So both of those organizations have great websites full of information about the Roadless Rule.
One more. They pop in towards the end, right? We have one more. Is there organized support for the campaign from other areas of the country? Do you want to answer that, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't necessarily work outside of Southeast Alaska, but I was just looking online this morning. I just actually got in from fishing yesterday, but I was looking online this morning. Yeah, there's a Southern Environmental Law Center that covers the forests in the southeast part of the country, where I've actually never been. I'm a Pacific Northwest guy, but yeah, there are people in the Northwest concerned about the Roadless Rule. So I'd say everywhere there's a forest, I know there's been forest advocacy groups in the Southwest for a long time that participated. They just haven't had to deal with this until now. But yeah, I think everybody who is involved in conserving a forest or uses it for economic purposes like recreation, or personally for recreation, is concerned about the Roadless Rule. There were a number of senators that wrote Department of Agriculture Secretary Rawlins just last month and said, we are very disappointed that you are doing this. Please go back and let us have our Roadless Rule. So I'd say, yes, this is a national issue.
Yes, and Earthjustice and Natural Resources Defense Council, I mean, they have offices throughout the country, right, Paul? So I imagine maybe in the other locations, don't want to speak for them, but I imagine their other branches are probably working on the other areas, not to mention our efforts with them in Alaska. Again, this Roadless Rule repeal is, in unison affecting all of those 58.5 million acres of forest throughout the country. So it's not like we're selectively, going to be fighting for just one. So the protection is to defend and protect everything that's in jeopardy through the repeal risk. Is that right to say, Paul?
Yeah, that's fair. It's interesting. We've just been fighting for the Tongass here in Southeast Alaska. I said it's called the Tongass exemption. It was a 2003 rule that said, nope, the Roadless Rule doesn't apply to the Tongass. And there are actually a couple other states. Idaho is one of them, and I think Wyoming is one of them, where they have also separately been in court like we have in Southeast Alaska and done this regulatory process multiple times. And so they have their own Roadless Rule provisions that are state specific. I think everywhere else in the country, I think Wyoming and Idaho are the only two, but everywhere else in the country, the Roadless Rule protects roadless areas and across every national forest and has never been exempted.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that, in previous attempts and previous defenses that we've done, there's been targets of specific forests under the Roadless Rule. So in the past, at least one time I know it was specifically the Tongass that was being targeted and that we went to defend. But this time they're targeting multiple forests across the country. And you're saying this time our defense applies to those multiple forests, right?
Yeah, they're undoing the whole thing, and they've never attempted to do that before. So,
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a great place. It's a pretty poignant note to end on, that they've never targeted widespread across the country before, and this will be the first time. So I think it's a great thing to circle back to the fact that the Roadless Rule's legacy is a testament to public will, because it was forged by 1.6 million comments in 2001. And as Paul said earlier, that's the highest number of comments for any U.S. regulatory matter in history. So that's massive. And, that's certainly a legacy that we want to, uphold. And, in this moment of, environmental urgency, this repeal reminds us that safeguarding these 58.5 million acres is a profound duty to, future generations, and even these current ones. And on that, I think that we're in a great place to close. Thank you all so much for your time. I think I'm just going to turn it over to Paul, see if you have anything else you want to add or say.
I think we nailed it. They're trying to undo the whole thing. Thank you so much, Marissa, for putting this together. You're doing a great job for us, and we'll let everybody know when the notice of intent comes out. We'll have a summary of it and a link to the website at www.regulations.gov for people who want to comment individually, and we'll put out more information as we can. Thank you for helping us.
Yes, thank you for helping us is right. And Paul, thank you. That means a lot coming from you, that comment. Thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate me. That means a lot to me coming from you. I just want to, I can't believe I don't have a banner for this already pre-set up, but I mean, it's pretty easy enough. I'm just going to type it right here. Add banner, and where did you go? There we go. Okay, so our website, theboatcompany.org. So that's our cruise lines website, but we are a nonprofit. So if you, this is where you would go if you want to stay in touch with us. On the bottom of every single page, the footer of our website is our newsletter sign up. So if you want to stay in touch over email, you can type in your email address at the bottom of any page of our website, theboatcompany.org, and we can keep you apprised. We definitely will be doing that over email anytime something comes out, or following us on any of our social channels, as you all probably already are, because that's how you're tuning in today. Also, obviously, if you go to that petition page the sign-on letter page that we talked about, act.theboatcompany.org, if you do go ahead and sign that sign-on letter, we do add you to our list as well. There's a checkbox there to be added to our e-blast list as well, so we can keep you apprised that way. We have a message from, we have Drenda. Drenda is...
Hi, Drenda. Thank you.
She's part of the boat company. We love you, Drenda. So nice to have you with us today. Thank you so much for listening in. We love having team support. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining in. And this live stream is going to stay as a recorded video on all the channels. So feel free to go to our YouTube or Facebook, whatever your preference is, find it and share it with any of your friends if you think that they would like to watch it. We do see a lot of people watch our videos after they've gone live, so definitely feel free to share. That's just something that some people don't know, but this video will live on, and you can definitely share it with all of your friends and family and people that you think would really care about this. So thank you all so much and for spending your Sunday with us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, Paul. We are so lucky, so blessed to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.